Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of the Ordinary Sacred, and I am excited today to teach you about firefighter parts. They get a bad rap. A lot of our managing parts do not like them. A lot of other people's managing parts do not like them, but they have such good intentions for us. And when we can befriend them, wow, it's really, really helpful for our system. So this is the next video in my series of IFS teaching videos on the IFS basics, and it's basically my IFS 101 self-paced course in small pieces. And so you can go back and watch the other videos before this or whichever ones seem interesting to you. And you can get my IFS 101 course, which will have, you know, um, group sessions and more explanations and worksheets and different things. It will be free on my website, theordinarysacred.com, because I am experimenting with a gift economy. And if you're interested in what that means, you can watch the last video that I made on the gift economy, what that is and what it means. But basically, all of my offerings on my website are free currently. Okay, so let me share my screen and begin talking about firefighters. All right, so you can see the firefighters here. Ooh, let me make my screen or my image bigger so you can kind of see me a little bit better as I teach you about firefighters. So you can see in this picture, right, there's a fire, which, um, fire is we need for life. It provides light and heat and warmth. And but when it gets out of control, when it gets too big, it threatens our well-being. And firefighters are rescue heroes, right? They come in and they fight the flames and they are emergency workers. They're urgent. They have an urgent agenda to put out the flames to save our lives. And they are likely going to destroy some things, right? With these powerful water hoses that, they don't care about destroying your furniture, your paintings, your antiques, um, in the process of saving your life. And that's very similar to the firefighter parts that are inside of us. So in the past, we talked about our exile parts, which are the parts at our core. They're often very young parts, the most vulnerable parts that hold maybe trauma memories, maybe stuck back in times of trauma, or they may hold qualities that our culture, our family deemed shameful, right? And so they had to be exiled. They had to be pushed down. Maybe they held strong, painful emotion or beliefs that threatened to overwhelm the system, to take over and destroy and burn down the system. And so our manager parts, which were the next parts we learned about, learned to keep them locked away. And so our manager parts usually exert a lot of energy to keep our exiles down and so that they don't threaten the system, or to keep the environment around us controlled. So they're controlling parts of us, they're controlling our environment, they're controlling other people to make sure that these exiles don't come up. But if essentially the managers are young parts as well, and they can't possibly keep that pain from coming up at times. So if something in our environment activates the pain of our exiles and the managers essentially are rendered useless and they can't do their job. So the pain of the exiles bursts through anyway into our consciousness. Um, that's when the firefighters' job is to come in. So it's kind of, you might think of the managers as like, you have flame retardant uh, material for your furniture, or you have rules around don't have an open flame in your house. don't burn a candle or leave the coffee maker on, right? The managers are the ones who are like preventing a fire from happening. And they're hyper vigilant and looking out for all these potential threats. But let's say something happens and a fire does start. Now the managers can't help. The firefighters, the rescue team has to come in and put out those flames. And the firefighters are very, a lot of times people will say they're impulsive, but they're reactionary, right? They're in alert, urgent mode. And so they're not thinking about keeping your house in order and like preventing any damage. They are, like I said, saving your life. So sometimes people think of firefighters as more extreme, they're less socially acceptable. You'll see as we go through this. So our firefighter parts seek to escape from the overwhelming pain or emotion of the exile once it has erupted into consciousness. So, okay, so a firefighter can have several different kind of jobs. One is to like just do whatever they can to try to put out the flames of that part. And often the strategy to do that is something that totally disconnects. So we might just dissociate from our body. We may go into um, our like total daydreaming, right? That like just takes us completely out of our present. Or we might seek distraction externally by, watching a TV show, binging, any kind of binging, really, will numb us out, whether we're food binging, alcohol binging, right? It kind of like will numb our system. So any kind of substance that will numb us. It might be shopping, it might be sex, pornography, gambling, kind of this uh, compulsive thing that we're doing to disconnect from our body or disconnect from the present moment. Now, this is not always a bad thing. So there's something called conscious blending where we will call the parts in. So just an example from this week for me, I was telling Brian about this yesterday. This week has felt like a year for me, as me and my sister and my dad and Brian and my sister's husband have worked really hard to care for my mom who had pneumonia and was in the hospital and really looked very weak, couldn't walk on her own, was having difficulty with the nurses and with different things in the hospital, wouldn't eat. So we were kind of like trying to make homemade food and constantly bring it to her and spoon it into her mouth and like keep her alive, essentially. It felt like we were all trying to keep her alive this last week. And it was so stressful to many of my parts. There were lots of layers around it, physically, mentally, emotionally, really taxed. And so when we finally got in this hotel room and we came here, I found that I just wanted to go on my phone and watch YouTube or Netflix or like something that would help me escape reality, right? And I was telling Brian that I was very aware of it. In the past, what's interesting is my managing parts would say that that was a bad thing and that it was a binging part and you're bad, you're lazy, you're distracting yourself, don't do it. But because myself has equanimity for all the parts and those managers are less burdened, I was able to say, I see you. I see your good intention. It's like my system needs a break. At their core, what firefighters really want for us is rest, relaxation, and adventure, excitement. Like a lot of times firefighters are risk takers because they want us to have adventure and excitement and play in our lives, right? So when they're unburdened, they have really good intention and good um, values for things like rest and play and adventure. But they can get really extreme to where they're actually threatening us and causing damage to our system. But anyway, in that example, I was able to say, I see you and I see your good intention, and I do need rest and distraction right now because if I just stay with the parts of me who are feeling worried and frantic and desperate and going over things, that won't necessarily be healthy for my system either. And I see that you binging, watching parts are trying to balance them out and give me some rest. And so I let you take over for a little bit, kind of thing. So there's still self-leadership. It doesn't mean the parts don't act and do their job, but I'm aware of it and I appreciate them and I show them appreciation. So just an example there from this last week. So, yeah, often our firefighters are reactive and impulsive, like I was saying, and it's because they genuinely feel urgent. Like there is an immediate threat, and I have to do whatever I can to save you. A difference between firefighters and managers is that firefighters are not focused on the big picture like managers might be. The well, and managers aren't always focused on the big picture either. Self is the one who has the biggest picture for sure. But managers are kind of more responsible and like trying to take into account different things and kind of planning and future oriented, where a firefighter is present oriented in the sense that they just want relief right now. They actually don't want you to have to be in the present. So they're helping you escape in some kind of way, but they are focused on the pain that's coming up right now. They're not trying to prevent anything or cause anything in the future. They're trying to numb you from the pain right now. Okay. Yeah, and their job is usually to escape, numb, or distract. And um, like I said, with the managers and the exiles, the word firefighter, a part is not intrinsically a firefighter, right? Firefighter just describes the job, the role that the part has taken on. And it's a role that is reactive, that comes in once the pain of the exile comes up and things like that. But it is not forever a firefighter necessarily. It might be a part that intrinsically has a value for rest and play, but its extreme job of escaping and numbing and distracting and deflecting, in an extreme way is not intrinsic to it. That just means that it is burdened and that it has had to do this for a reason to save you. So some examples, I kind of gave some already, but any kind of addiction or binging, like shopping, social media, Netflix, YouTube, pornography, food, alcohol, drugs, exercise, sex, reading, daydreaming, all those things that in and of themselves are not bad, but they become extreme because the part desperately wants to keep you from the present. So it can go on and become an addiction. And the only way to get it to stop or to not feel like it has to keep doing that is to go to the pain, which is what it's so afraid of going to, right? And to let the firefighter know that there is one inside, the capital S self that we've talked about, that has all those beautiful C qualities, that is calm and confident and courageous and creative and compassionate and clear and connected and all those things, that self has the capacity to meet the pain, to be with the flames, to actually, because the thing is, the firefighters, in essence, in this analogy of sorts, cannot actually put the flames out. Um, I know a real life firefighter could do that, but in the context of IFS, it really is only the self that can do that. So the job of the firefighter is very futile and they're tired and they just keep working and working and working. And it doesn't often work. And then sometimes they create more damage, right? Because they create damage in relationships with other people because they have these addictions. I do want to also go over this last sentence that they can also be extreme or rebellious behavior, things like rage, self-harm, or suicidal ideation. So sometimes the tactic of the firefighter is to push out, right? Like the pain is directed in. And so instead of feeling it in, I'm going to push the pain out. That's kind of that saying, hurt people, because when they're feeling hurt, they can't hold it. It feels unbearable. So then we push it out to other people, usually in rage or criticism of others, controlling of others, that kind of thing. Now, self-harm often happens, there's a couple different reasons. You have to go in and ask the part directly, and it will tell you exactly why it does what it does. Sometimes a part is self-harming, like when someone cuts themselves because it's creating physical pain to distract from the intense emotional pain. It might even create a pain in your body, in your jaw, your back, your any part of your body. It's creating the pain. I've had parts like this that will explain to me that they're creating the physical pain to distract me from this emotional pain because it just feels unbearable to bear. And when I go to it and I say, it's okay, the self, can go to the emotional pain. I can be with it. I can help it. The physical pain will go away immediately because it doesn't have to do that anymore to distract from the emotional pain. Um, Now, suicidal parts, suicidal ideation. Oh, well, I'll say this real quick, but the kingpin of the firefighters. It's the hierarchy is all of these firefighters try to do their job, and if it doesn't work, suicide's at the top. It's the last resort because it's saying nothing's working to get rid of this pain. The ultimate way to get rid of it is to get rid of us so that and then the pain will stop. That's the thinking often of a suicidal part. But it is the last resort. And that's why a lot of times if someone has a self-harming part or some kind of addiction, and managers inside of them or other people try to stop the addictive part, suicide will come in because you're not allowing the addictive part to do its job to numb the pain. And so now suicide feels like it needs to come in. So the real path forward is in appreciating the addictive part, understanding that it is trying really hard, even though it can't do it, to help the person cope with this incredible emotional pain that they're experiencing. Again, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. What's going on? Why do you make sense? Um, and then what I was going to say earlier about self-harming part, and it kind of goes with suicidal parts as well, is that when you ask a self-harming part, why are you doing this? Like I said, it might be to give you physical pain, to distract you from emotional pain. But other times I have other parts who have said that they are essentially punishing me. They'll say me, and I'll say, who am I? And they're really trying to punish another part of me that they think deserves punishment, discipline, right? They think that that part has done something bad or wrong and needs to be punished or suppressed or hurt in some way. And there, you can even have what Dick calls murderous parts, where they essentially, it's like a suicidal part, but not exactly because it doesn't want to die. It basically wants to kill another part. It says, you deserve to die. So if you hear inside, I want to die, that's kind of a suicidal part. But if you hear a part that says, you need to die, it's essentially a huge inner critic that is pointing at another part and saying, you are so bad, you're causing pain or you're causing so much problem socially that you need to go away. And I'm willing to die with you and take out the whole system so that we won't be socially ostracized and we won't have this shame and this pain inside anymore. Um, so again, I'm going to stop sharing this and talk about the path forward of what actually helps firefighters. So normally what a lot of therapy modalities, self-help things, religions, all kinds of programs, often what they do is they elicit the managing parts to try to manage the firefighter parts. And I'm not saying that that's an awful, terrible thing. Sometimes when a person's system is really, really dominated by firefighters who are risk takers, who are doing really extreme things that might be destructive, through rage and control of other people or self-harming of themselves or having addictions that have real, real negative impact, right? Sometimes when people have firefighters that are dominant, it can help balance the system to bring in some managers to say, okay, let's try to manage you and control you a little bit. Um, but it's not effective. It can be useful, and managers have good intention, and the people using the managers have good intention, but it's ultimately not going to cure the root issue. It's not going to heal the root issue. So then you're just going to have firefighters trying to act out and managers trying to pull them back and going like this, right? And it might save the person's life for a little bit because the firefighter doesn't come in, maybe. But it's ultimately, they're just going to keep going back to the firefighters, and then the managers are going to pull them back and they're going to go like this, right? Or up and down, or however you want to say it. Um, but the way to actually solve the issue, in the next video, I'm actually going to talk about this whole dynamic more, but is to understand, I like to think of it like here's the firefighters and the managers, and they're pulling back and forth, but underneath them both are the exiles, and around all three of them is the self. And when you understand that both the managers and the firefighters can't stop doing what they're doing until what they protect, the exiles, are healed and helped, you appreciate their efforts, right? You cannot make any of them stop just through willpower or coercion. You have to go and help and heal the exiles underneath. And the hope and the beauty of IFS is that that can happen. The managers can't heal the exiles. The firefighters can't heal the exiles. They're all usually quite young parts as well. But the self absolutely can. The self has the capability to go to the parts that hold the deepest pain for us, that are stuck in trauma, that hold our most shameful qualities, that hold legacy burdens, cultural burdens, and really deep, painful personal burdens, and witness them with non-judgment, with complete compassion, and be with them in their suffering and in their pain, and say, I really get it. I get what you've been through. And then they can reparent or redo those situations. Yes, that is wonderful, actually. The reparenting, redoing step is amazing, where the self essentially time travels back to the moments that these parts are stuck in, witnesses what happened to them, and then gives them an experience because where they have connection and love and safety, right? Our current adult loving self gives that to the parts underneath, and or the parts that are in that trauma situation, because the trauma really comes not just from what happened to them, but the fact that they were alone, not attuned to, not didn't have a healthy, safe attachment in that situation. So our current adult loving self is going back and giving them what they needed in that situation so that it wouldn't be a trauma. And when we do that, we essentially rewire our neural networks for that memory, that we are giving them a new experience of having a loving adult witness them, understand them, and then reparent them, give them what they need, whether that's safety, to stand up to a perpetrator, to take them out of there, whatever it is. Um, and then once we have reparented them, then we can retrieve them. We can, once they're ready, we can bring them back into the present or forward into the present. And they can be with us as their loving parent now, or loving guide, loving adult in their life, right? And they can, once in a safe place, can identify where their burdens are in or around their body. And I'm going through this process as I do the videos. I'm going to go through this more and more and more in depth. But I like to have repetition so you really understand, what does the IFS process look like? This is the healing step, right? Or steps. So once they're retrieved, they identify where their burdens are in or around their body. And their burdens are their painful beliefs and emotions. So they can feel helplessness, shame, hopelessness, terror, physical pain. They might have beliefs, I'm unlovable, no one will be there for me. Life is, um, no one can be depended on, and life is terrible and always scary, or, just these really painful beliefs. And the loving self can help them do an unburdening ritual to give their burdens over to one of the elements, to fire, to um, so literally the firefighters are trying to fight the fire, but we can actually burn the, the that's one of the ways that exiles often like to release their burdens, is to put them in a fire. The other times they like to throw them into the ocean, or bury them in the earth, or give them to the sunlight, um, or let them blow away in the wind, right? Kind of give them to one of the elements, and the young exile part can decide that. And then once they are unburdened, they feel so much lighter from not having to carry that anymore, and from being connected to a loving source inside and this with the self, that they just start naturally showing you their valuable qualities, which might be creativity, playfulness. They want to dance, they want to sing, they want to explore, all these wonderful things. They have energy and lightness to them. And then once the exile is free and healed and helped and is in connection with the self, the protectors, the firefighters, and the managers can also be relieved of their jobs. So, like I said, the firefighters don't have to be extreme anymore and be addicted to this thing and to get you out of the present, because the pain of the exile is not there anymore. So now what they do is they just help you have fun and be playful and enjoy life and have adventures and just rest on a beautiful day. They have really, really beautiful qualities to offer our system. Okay. So I know I said more than I intended. I always just want to give the whole process of IFS, even though I'm trying to just do it in chunks here. If you have any questions about firefighters, what their intention is, if you have a part that you're wondering, is it a firefighter? And again, it's not a firefighter. Firefighters just describe the role that a part is taking. A part can be both a firefighter and a manager. It could be both a firefighter and an exile, because often addictive parts, other manager parts try to exile. Angry parts are often exiled. You can, a part can essentially have various roles simultaneously, but it's just helpful to understand what they're doing, when they do it, why they do it, right? And as you go toward the part, you can ask them all these questions. If you feel open and non-judgmental and curious toward them, you can say, I see you're working really hard. I feel so taken over by you and compelled. I have to do this. So I see that you feel urgent. What are you afraid would happen if you didn't do this? And they'll say you would feel painful shame. You would be left alone with your grief and it would overtake you, right? And say, oh, what if I went to the one who holds grief? What if I went to the one who holds shame and I could help them? Would you have to keep doing this in such an urgent way? Sometimes they'll say, I don't believe you can do that, right? And then you can ask them, who do you see when you look at me? Who do you think I am? Because you might be blended with a manager part that hates them and they're like, I don't trust you, right? Or they might think that you're the exile. You might say, how old do you think I am? And the firefighter says, you're 5, right? And you say, oh, actually, I'm almost 50. And they go, what? And so then you can just propose an experiment. You can stand right next to me and you can take me away from the exile at any point because I know that you care so much and you know the exile and you know the information so well. You're the boss, as Dick says, and you can help me and you can tell me if the flames are too big and we need to get out of there, and I will listen to you. But are you willing to do an experiment to let me, the self that's not a part, to go to what feels overwhelming and just help them? And sometimes the experiment is, can I just go there for 30 seconds? Or, you might negotiate with the firefighter about how long they'll let you go. But it's a very respectful, you never override a protector. You always meet their concerns before going to the exile. Okay. Um, I hope you appreciated that. Again, I'm rambling on because I get so excited about this process. But if you have any questions or comments about firefighter parts, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.